Good morning, everyone. Welcome to SEPS. Good morning to everybody tuning in online. And we are here this morning with a very good lineup of speakers to talk about the future for Tunisia's democracy. And I think my name is, let me just introduce myself. My name is James Moran. I'm an Associate Senior Fellow here at SEPS. And a former EU ambassador to Jordan, Libya, and to Egypt. Everyone in the region, the Middle East and North Africa region, has been watching very, very closely developments in Tunisia. And for a long time, of course, those developments were considered, certainly in the West, as pretty positive. In many ways, Tunisia is or was perhaps, the main success story from the Arab uprisings of a decade ago. But now there is a lot of concern. The president in Tunisia, President Saied, continues to consolidate his presidential power. Political parties, civil society has been marginalized. We'll hear more about the virtual session of Parliament from some of our speakers now that took place last month. There's been an attempt to criminalize those who attended that session. He's got a roadmap, but it doesn't seem to be getting a great deal of support from the Tunisian people. There was a very low participation in the national consultation, as far as I know. Here in Europe, there has been concern, of course, in the European Parliament. There was a mission by the European Parliament Foreign Affairs Committee just a month ago. Our speakers did meet, I think, with them. And they gave the message of concern about the deteriorating human rights situation and the treatment of civil society, and called for a national dialogue. Of course, there was great concern also about the economic situation of Tunisia. Now, when we talk about human rights, we're sitting here on a day which is very important in the region. Someone who I knew years ago was tragically killed yesterday in Jenin, in the occupied West Bank. Shireen Abu Akleh was a wonderful, wonderful person, a great journalist, a huge loss for the region and for the world, and we are all extremely sad about that. We can only hope that the perpetrators are brought to justice and that whoever is responsible is held accountable. I think we know already who is probably responsible. The question is going to be, will they be held accountable? In any event, at a time when we talk about rights and democracy, in the Tunisian case, we should remember the sad day today. And so I'm sure you would all agree we should show our sympathies to her family and everyone else involved. And so far as the EU is concerned on Tunisia, of course, a great deal of support has gone in over the years. Billions in assistance. Most recently, another example was the association to the Horizon program. Tunisia remains the only Arab country to be in that position. But in terms of critical engagement by the EU, one has to wonder. And I think the EU has to be careful at a time like this when it is supporting democracy and rights in Ukraine. If critical engagement is not pursued in Tunisia, I fear for the accusation coming yet again about double standards. The Arab Gulf countries and Egypt, of course, are not too sympathetic to that. They seem to be supporting the president's moves. And there are many other aspects to this too, but I'm not going to continue because we have a very, very good lineup of speakers. And let us start, if we may, with Ahmed Alou, who is the former Minister and the Speaker of the Tunisian Parliament. And Ahmed will begin our session today. And he'll be followed by two of his colleagues, and Richard Milson from Mace magazine here in Brussels will then give us a European perspective. With that, thanks again for being here, and over to you, Ahmed.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you, James. And good morning, everyone, or afternoon, wherever you are. I'm glad to be here with you and to have this opportunity to speak about Tunisia. At the same time, I feel sad that I am speaking about a crisis in our country, because we see ourselves as a message of hope for all our region that yes, democracy works, and values of democracy are universal values, and this is what we really share with Europe. Yes, we are, as we describe ourselves, the small Africa, Afriqiyya. So we are the doorway towards Africa, and at the same time, we are the doorway towards the Mediterranean. So Tunisia is strategic. It's strategic within the Mediterranean, within Europe, and also within Africa. Some people will describe Tunisia as a buffer zone. So if there is stability in Tunisia, then we can speak about stability in all the region. While if there is no stability, then there is a risk of instability. The issue of stability, which needs to be described, is one of the main questions, and one of the controversial questions in regard to Tunisia, and especially if we speak about the international community and the European Union. Because sometimes people will describe stability as a heavy hand with security, as it has been described by the previous French president, who said, well, there is a miracle in Tunisia, le miracle tunisien. Why? Because there is stability, but without democracy. However, it came out that this argument is totally false. The international community and Europe has invested a lot of money in a stability which is based on strong men and security. But at the end of the day, after 2 decades, we've had what we do proudly describe as the Arab Spring. But when the system or the regime fell in Tunisia, we've had a wave over all the region. When democracy succeeds in Tunisia, it gives a message to all the region. When democracy fails in Tunisia, it also gives a message to all the region. So it's not only about us in Tunisia, this small country, small numbered population, not many resources. No, it's about all the region. It's about Europe. It is about the international community. It is about the values of democracy. Does democracy work or not? Democracy is being challenged today by heavy arms in Ukraine, and that's right. And humanity, the international community, have started today hearing new voices that no, democracy is not the solution. There is another world vision. And actually for those Democrats, they are not really Democrats. They only defend their interests. And that's why they do not care about you, Tunisians, Algerians, Moroccans, or Palestinians, or Egyptians. They only care about their interests. And we can hear from many Russian diplomats speaking that, well, you Arabs should listen to us. I don't want to speak about China, who is really efficiently working. So let me put it in this way. Yes, there is a war in Ukraine, and us in Tunisia, we stand with the Ukrainian people. We stand against the Russian invasion because we would like to defend the will of the Ukrainian. We defend democracy. However, we are not witnessing from the European Union a serious stance in defending democracy. And let me be frank with you. The declarations from European Commission right now it is recognizing, and let me put it in this way, what we do believe and describe as a coup. Because Kais Saied right now is governing, he took over power and governing by decrees. Right now, we did not hear from Europe and European countries that they say, hey, listen, you are not working within the legitimacy which brought you up to power. The only heart-lifted declaration which we got is when we've got the delegation from EU, MEP's delegation who came there, and they said it, and we are proud to that, well, Kais Saied enjoys the same electoral legitimacy which is which supports, which legitimizes the parliament. But right now, we do not see that the parliament is enjoying the same profile as being addressed as an institution of the state from the democratic institution in Europe. And this tells us that up to now, whether some members of member states of Europe are not standing by democracy, and at the end of the day, Europe is not standing by democratic institutions of the state. We are not speaking about political parties. Well, yes, democracy, it has its weaknesses. And we can see Europe knows what happened in Eastern European countries who've had their revolutions, so they know that the democracy cannot succeed if not supported. Europe knows the history of Germany after the Second World War. Europe knows the history of South Africa after the Second World War. They've been supported. The same thing happened in Spain or in Portugal. We are your neighbors, or actually part of Europe. So for democracy to succeed, we need a voice which cannot be interpreted otherwise, which means that Europe is supporting democracy, and this is not happening. However, from our side, we are more than confident that we Democrats fighting for democracy, and you can see in this panel that we are a cross-party people. And Democrats in Tunisia are sitting together and getting into an inclusive dialogue so that we foresee the future for the country, and so that we plan for that, for that future. But we would like this process of freeing ourselves from this, I would not say dictatorship. I would say, I mean, it's total populism. I mean, the project of Kais Saied, he says it, and those who are around him, they say, we have a universal project, new values for humanity. We need someone who would govern a direct relationship between he who governs and he with a big H, and the people, with no institutions, just direct governing. This is his project. No democracy, no institutions, no government, nothing. He is the absolute leader who has a messianic mission, not only to bring to Tunisia, but for all humanity. Well, this is what they are saying. You can read it. So you have this, and there is us. And even though we disagree with him, we are not calling for a dialogue which excludes anyone. We are calling for an inclusive dialogue. So yes, Tunisia is going through a downfall. But we Tunisians were ready and are ready and are able to sit down together to overstep our differences. And we do have a lot of differences, so that we can come in front or on a base which has two things: institutions, constitution, the rule of law, and consensual approach to all, and a dialogue which its outcome will decide about our future. And just the last word. Our constitution, it is our constitution, we are proud of it. It is a consensual constitution, and its strength is that it is a consensual constitution which have been voted by 92% a very wide spectrum of political stakeholders, ideological background of the parliament. It has its weaknesses, yes, but this is ours. It expresses our commonwealth. And if we were to change it, we need to change it according to a free dialogue, which really expresses our commonwealth. Kais Saied does not have an alternative. He will close the door, he will come out with a text. But that is not the solution. He is not a prophet to come with a revealed text which enlightens the road to humanity. We are way beyond this. Humanity has really moved way beyond this stage. So we are here in Tunisia defending our democracy, defending our institutions, defending the state. We are not just an opposition. This is not an opposition against a ruler. We are defending the democratic state, and it is high time for democrats around the world to stand by this democracy so that they also convey a message that democracy works for everyone and there is no double standards. If this generation of moderates fail, then there will be no other moderate generation. And I would tell you, we are the last moderate generation. We either win with you, with everyone. If we fail, then I don't think that moderation will be the answer in our region, not only in Tunisia. Thank you very much, and I hope I was not that long. If there is any further questions, I'll be more than happy to answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ahmed, and we got that message. We are the last moderate generation. Food for thought. Next, I think I would like to ask Oussama Khalifi, MP, to speak. Now, he's going to speak in French. Can I ask the audience here, are you comfortable with the French language? Anybody not comfortable? If so, we can have consecutive translation. Put your hand up if you're not comfortable and we can arrange it. No? All right. Alors, Monsieur Khalifi, à vous, s'il vous plaît.
Merci beaucoup. Merci pour nos amis qui sont présents ici. On est très content de venir vous voir. Malheureusement, on vient vous voir parce que la Tunisie passe par une situation difficile, une situation avec beaucoup de causes en fait qui sont là et qu'il faudrait peut-être qu'on en parle pour que vous sachiez ce qui se passe exactement, du moins de notre point de vue et du point de vue des députés, des partis politiques, des différents partis politiques, de la société civile, qui sommes tous d'accord aujourd'hui sur le fait que ce qui se passe en Tunisie, non seulement est très dangereux, il est anormal et c'est une situation pour du moins très explosive. Et il nous a paru nécessaire d'expliquer, au moins pour prévenir, pour peut-être entre gens qui s'intéressent à ce pays, qui est le pays que vous avez connu, qui a vécu cette démocratie naissante, qui a vécu cette révolution, qui était le premier peut-être où la jeunesse est sortie pour demander une démocratie, pour demander une vie meilleure. Pendant ces 10 ans, il y a eu des fautes, il y a eu des erreurs, c'est sûr, on le reconnaît. Ce n'est pas notre façon, en tout cas, de faire en sorte que non, il n'y a pas eu d'erreur. On le reconnaît, il y a eu d'erreurs. Mais c'est une démocratie naissante, c'est une jeune démocratie. 10 ans, c'est pas beaucoup. Les erreurs sont là, oui, mais ce qui se passe aujourd'hui dépasse les erreurs. Ce qui se passe aujourd'hui, c'est la destruction de tous ces acquis. Et là, bien sûr, notre devoir à nous, c'est de tirer la sonnette d'alarme. D'abord, notre devoir constitutionnel et notre devoir aussi national en tant que jeune, parce que je me considère jeune ou moins jeune, mais pour dire, il faut qu'on trouve tous une solution à cette crise intense qui se résume, en fait, bien sûr, dans les problèmes économiques et sociaux, mais dans une crise politique et démocratique. Kais Saied a été élu démocratiquement, comme nous, députés, par la même loi électorale et la même constitution. Après 2 ans de pouvoir exécutif, où il a nommé 2 gouvernements, la Tunisie est passée par un premier stade, bien sûr, où après les élections, on n'a pas eu une majorité claire pour pouvoir gouverner. Kais Saied a pu nommer ses ministres, son premier gouvernement qui a chuté, son deuxième gouvernement qui est venu en pleine crise du Covid, et il ne faut pas l'oublier aussi que la Tunisie a été frappée de plein fouet de cette crise et de cette pandémie mondiale du Covid, chose qui a fait affaiblir, bien sûr, tout le processus. Les solutions étaient là. Bien sûr qu'il fallait réformer, bien sûr qu'il fallait réformer au niveau économique, qu'il fallait réformer au niveau politique. On est tous d'accord qu'il faut des réformes. Mais ce qui se passe aujourd'hui, c'est un coup d'État. C'est un coup d'État. En tout cas, on ne peut pas l'appeler constitutionnel parce que l'article 80, et je vous invite à le lire, dit très clairement que le Parlement et que le gouvernement ne peut pas être dissous. Kais Saied a surpassé tout ça. Il a convaincu, on va dire, la communauté européenne, la communauté internationale que ce qui se passait dans la scène politique et ce qui se passait dans le Parlement, et on peut le croire parce qu'il y avait des divisions, il y avait des chamailleries, il y avait, en tout cas au niveau du Parlement, tout était filmé. Donc il y avait quelque chose qui se passait pas de la bonne manière et on le reconnaît aussi. En tant que parti politique, on a essayé de le combattre, mais on n'est pas arrivé à un issue, en tout cas, un issue favorable pour pouvoir trouver un consensus autour de ça. Mais la solution n'était pas de fermer le Parlement avec un tank militaire. Et c'est pour ça qu'on se bat aujourd'hui. C'est pour ça que, fort de cette démocratie et fort de ces valeurs qu'on partage ensemble et qu'on y a cru et que la population tunisienne y a cru à cette transition démocratique. Et fort aussi de la Constitution qui nous donne droit de se battre, de s'opposer à tout ça. Fort de ce sacrilège et votre Constitution à vous, je ne sais pas, dans les pays qui constituent l'Europe, la Constitution, c'est quelque chose de sacré. Et bien nous, fort de ça, on se bat pour dire que notre Constitution, il ne faut pas y toucher. Bien sûr, les solutions, il faut les faire, mais il faut les faire d'une manière inclusive, et c'est ce que ne veut pas écouter le président putschiste aujourd'hui. Là, on appelle au dialogue national, parce que c'est comme ça qu'on trouve des solutions. Kais Saied n'accepte pas le dialogue. On appelle à ce que tout le monde mette les problèmes et les priorités qu'on dit que ce sont les priorités économiques et sociales aujourd'hui qui mettent le pays en péril. Eh bien, Kais Saied ne veut pas mettre ses priorités sur la table. Résultat des courses, dans quoi on est? Dans une situation très grave, dans une situation où ni le politique discutent ensemble. Il n'y a plus d'union nationale puisqu'il y a un discours. Le président de la République utilise le pouvoir, son pouvoir du magistère et son pouvoir populiste, on veut dire, parce que tout populiste, par définition, il est populaire. Ça, vous pouvez en être sûr. Si je reprends l'exemple de mon amie Sofiane, si demain je vais en Tunisie et je dis, écoutez, les jeunes, vous voulez partir en Europe, eh bien écoutez, élisez-moi président, je vous laisserai tous partir. C'est du populisme. Mais ça marche. Aujourd'hui, ce discours-là marche en Tunisie, mais ce discours-là est en train de détruire la Tunisie. Ce discours-là est en train de diviser la Tunisie. Nous, ce qu'on prône aujourd'hui, c'est bien sûr un dialogue inclusif, c'est un retour à la Constitution, parce que c'est la base sur laquelle on peut se mettre d'accord, et c'est le retour aussi aux institutions, et puis c'est le retour au peuple avec après un consensus national et une feuille de route claire, non pas cette feuille de route qui est accepté par la communauté européenne, mais en fait c'est un leurre, c'est une feuille de route pour appliquer le programme personnel de Kais Saied, qui est un programme à la Kadhafi, mais un Kadhafi sans pétrole. C'est un programme qui veut tout casser, c'est un programme qui n'a jamais été appliqué nulle part ailleurs, et c'est un programme qui va diviser encore le pays, c'est un programme sur le niveau de la stabilité, va créer une instabilité non seulement politique et sociale, mais une instabilité sécuritaire. Donc, fort de tout ça, fort de tous ces arguments, nous nous battons pour cette jeune démocratie, nous nous battons pour instaurer vraiment un dialogue national autour des institutions, parce qu'on ne reconnaît pas la dissolution du Parlement, parce qu'il n'a pas été dissous d'une façon constitutionnelle, et fort aussi de cette constitution qui nous permet de se battre pour sauver notre pays. Donc, ce cri d'alarme est un cri d'alarme, non pas pour l'appel à l'ingérence, mais un cri d'alarme pour dire attention, ce qui se passe en Ukraine, c'est très grave, mais ce qui se passe en Tunisie n'est pas moindre au niveau de la gravité. Ce n'est pas une guerre, mais c'est une cocotte minute qui peut exploser d'une minute à l'autre. D'une minute à l'autre, je parle de minutes et de jours et de semaines, et c'est une priorité qui doit être nationale et internationale pour trouver une solution au plus vite. Voilà, je vous remercie. Si vous avez des questions, je suis à votre service. Merci de votre écoute.
Un grand merci. Bon, I took the message there. You described it as Gaddafi without oil. I only hope you are wrong, because having spent some time in Libya myself, I would hope very much there was only ever one Muammar Gaddafi. But in any event, we got the message. Merci. Could we then move to Sofia Makhloufi, who is an MP and indeed chair of the Tunisia-France Friendship Group, who's going to continue the discussion and maybe tell us a bit more about the European reaction to all of this, if you could. You're close to that as the Friendship Group. Go ahead, please, sir.
Hello tout le monde. I will speak in English, but my English is not very sophisticated. Thank you to invite me to talk about democracy and Tunisia. But to start, I want to say we are talking about a democracy in some special region, is Arab and Muslim world. And I have to say, you are talking about democracy in words. Stop thinking since now around 5 centuries, since the end of Andalusia. If you look in the history of Muslim Arab world, you will see is 4 or 5 centuries is a word doesn't product a thought about what he is and his place in the world. And we have to understand democracy in the process of the civilization and the culture. When the Tunisian revolution arrived in 2011, I think the democracy was a thought of the leaders, social and political leaders, but culture, in the way of the culture, we haven't got really a thought about democracy. But we try to build that democracy in Tunisia, when it's a little state with people without religious and ethnic conflict. But we have 2 problems to build that democracy. We irritate a corruption state and a very conservative culture about all its freedom and human rights being. And we try to build that democracy. When we start to build that democracy since 2011, we had a big problem for 5 or 6 years, is to fight terrorism. And we make it 5 or 6 years to fight terrorism. And I think we have a successful because we arrived to stabilize the security of Tunisia and to eradicate terrorism in Tunisia. And I think that is the success of Tunisia, because we are really, you know, the problem with Libya and all the state of the south of the desert, like Mali and etc. Look, I think the fight with the terrorism stop us to think how really to build a real democracy and a very strong democracy. So the social and economic situation wasn't really well, but we have crisis of economic and social problem, and we didn't work. We have to recognize we didn't work to resolve that problem because we didn't bring a job to the young people, and we didn't find a solution for all those social and economic problems. We have to recognize, like a politician, and I'm a member of the parliament, between 25 of July 2021, before the coup, the situation wasn't well, and we have a social, economic, and political crisis. In my party and my politics group, we asked the president to start a national dialogue, inclusive dialogue, to think together about the solution we could found for the economic and financial problem of Tunisia, because we can't keep having loan from Europe and FME. We can't continue that because that doesn't help the economy and make more financial crisis for the states. The president, I can't say he refused, but he didn't do that. Because I think in his place of president, he could really ask for a national dialogue to find a solution with all the social and political forces to find a solution to that crisis. He left the situation like that, and when you are in a social and political crisis, of course you will have the populism come up. And I think in the 25th of July, he used all the populism thought about the political and economic crisis in Tunisia to take all the power for himself. When he takes the power for himself in the 25th, some of the political force think he will do that to find a solution with everybody in inclusive dialogue. But little by little, everyone now discover is a personal project and a personal populist project. And I don't think with a personal populist project we could find a solution to Tunisia. Because of that, we keep asking him and asking everybody in Tunisia to have really a national inclusive dialogue with all the political forces, social forces, and civil forces to find a solution to the political crisis and the economic crisis. But we want to have that dialogue under the constitution, because is when we break all the rules, we can't have rules for just one. He decide what's the rules. Because of that, the word map, the President said, I don't think that it will be a solution, because the word map will be made by just himself and what just him want to do to talk with. And when we do dialogue, we do a dialogue with people who doesn't agree with us. It's not just with people who agree with us, because that is not a dialogue. For your question about the European situation, I think we don't ask the European to interface in Tunisia, but I think it's some cooperation with Europe in economic and political way since 1995, because we have convention in 1995 when is the politic and human right being was introduced in the convention. But I think with Europe, the problem with Europe is always the European think about them security, and them thought is always how to protect themselves from the south of Mediterranean. And always they are thinking how we could be the police of the border of Europe in the Mediterranean Sea. And because of that, before the 25 and now, the dialogue with the European is not easy because they don't think to have a development equal development. Does mean they have them interest and we have our interest too. But they're just thinking how really to make any stability for them to protect themselves just for immigration. And that for us is not a solution, because if is unequal development between us, the problem of that immigration will continue anyway. And we think we have to debate with the European to find a solution about equal development. We don't say we don't need the European to work together, but no in the way the European want to work with us is just to make any stability to protect themselves from the migration. I could answer your question after if really you want more precise.
Thank you so much. That was very interesting. And you were talking there about the socioeconomic situation, which of course is presenting a huge dilemma for Europe and the wider West, including the United States, which has, I think, the Assistant Secretary of State in Tunis today as we speak. Now, the US has cut its aid, or at least restricted its aid to Tunisia, hoping for a better performance on the democracy front. Europe has not done that. There was also the IMF story, which the president seems to be hesitant about, but quite honestly, most analysts, I think, know that without such injection into the Tunisian economy, there is likely to be even worse crises ahead. But if you do that, maybe you end up supporting the president. And a lot of people don't want to see it. So there is a big dilemma here. Richard Milsom's our last speaker. Maybe you'd like to address that dilemma and a few other issues too. Richard, over to you.
Well, thank you very much, James, and good morning or good afternoon to all of you. Actually, I come here today not as a journalist, not as a public affairs consultant, but actually as a true friend of Tunisia, a country that I've spent much time in over the last years and have a very, very fond affection for its people and for the huge progress that was made since 2011. James mentioned it right at the beginning, but since 2011, Tunisia was the shining star for Arab democracy, and it made so much progress, which makes it so sad as to what's happening at the moment. But it also means that, us as the EU and the international community, which have supported over the last decade or so, actually now need to start to practice what we preach. We push the values of a free society, the separation of powers, the rule of law, democracy, free speech, but actually now is the time for us to act. And we need to look at ways which I would like to come on to through my short talk. I think just as background, for us it wasn't really a great surprise when Saied dissolved Tunisia's parliament in the end of March. He had already replaced the Supreme Judicial Council, he'd shut down the Anti-Corruption Commission and used a range of extraordinary measures, making blanket arrests and intimidating his critics since the coup last summer. He responded to the first direct challenge to this power grab as Tunisian lawmakers met for the first time since he suspended the parliament and voted to block the emergency powers he granted himself last year. Obviously now he's got rid of the legislature entirely. And to this, and another worrying sign is that he's now dismissed the Independent Electoral Commission, which further entrenches the one-man rule and it destroys the electoral integrity of the country. I feel very, I'm very worried for those MPs that have defied Saied's dictatorship, because many of them are now facing charges, forming a criminal association. And this can come with very heavy sentences, 20 years or more, even death. Tunisia has dangerously broad anti-terrorism laws, and it's another sign that for all the resistance of some Tunisian judges, some brave politicians like we have today, the country is becoming Said's personal fiefdom. The security services that are close to him are doing his bidding. But increasingly, the other forces, I think, that are supposed to safeguard Tunisia's democracy are siding with Said too. The military, for example, that swore to protect the constitution instead of actually helped him sideline it. It's the accumulation is a near absolute power that has led to this dissolution of the parliament. The judiciary is essentially his personal fiefdom too. Increasingly other forces that were supposed to safeguard it are siding with him. I think for Tunisians this means that they are now living with the inevitable horrors that come with authoritarian regimes and dictatorship, now made worse by the war in Ukraine. It's clear that the chaos and instability, further chaos and instability, is looming. And we see food shortages, hikes in prices, including fuel. And as Tunisians are already dealing with the shockwaves of Putin's war, I think Tunisia is incredibly vulnerable and almost in a state of collapse. I saw recently the EU provided 20 million in terms of support for 2 loads of grain. This is vitally important because something like 56–60% of Tunisia's grain comes from Russia and Ukraine. But things are getting worse, and of course the lack of accountability or any check on Said's power is exacerbating the situation. I think it's likely we're probably going to see more corruption as well, further gutting the economy. I mean, the police and security wages are almost unable to be paid now as the country cannot cover its deficit and face its debts. So they will obviously look to cover their financial requirements by finding it difficult to resist bribes. And I think as Said's new promotions in security services are more willing to look at ways such as infractions in exchange for loyalty. So effectively you're going to get kickbacks from those that are loyal to Said, and everybody else will be left behind, including journalists, judges, and other people that would expose some of these crimes. He is an insurgent leader who doesn't trust the state. He has sanctioned a culture of impunity. I think increasingly thugs do his bidding, and we see this in the abusive treatment of his MPs, and there are numerous examples of this, which I'm sure you're aware. I think if Western countries don't take a stand against the dismantling of Tunisia's democracy, they must ready themselves for the inevitable consequences. Said and his increasing brutality is imposing more and more costs, more and more brutality, and he's just taking more power, reducing the stability and splitting Tunisians into sort of traitors and followers. If you're in the president's good favor, you'll survive. If not, you will suffer. I think Tunisia desperately needs aid as the war in Ukraine takes its toll on the soaring food and energy costs. But the trouble is that, can Said and his gang be trusted to solve this crisis or administer any such aid with the current situation? I worry that with Said at the helm, there's a dark future for Tunisia. And to accept everything he's doing, the illegal power grab and the effective suspension of the constitution, is only legitimizing the hell that comes with completely unchecked power. Historically, we've seen that eventually this type of behavior will turn on him. So either Said will turn on the current batch of insiders that he's elevated around him, or they will turn on him with the kind of authoritarian logic of sacrificing anyone in the name of holding on to power as things crumble around. But that doesn't bring any comfort, and it won't satisfy the population in despair. Really, in either case, Tunisia loses its democracy and dictatorship survives. Western democracies cannot say they have no part in what Tunisia has become if they keep indulging Said and ignoring his abuses. So the question becomes, what should we do? as an international community? Well, it is true that since 2011, Tunisia has engaged fully with international organizations across the world, is highly respected and has a good reputation. So there are a lot of international organizations vested. This has led to support, to grants, and to investments. So there are many, many links here. What is also needed is a bit of leadership as well. I know obviously we've been very absorbed with the war in Ukraine, but we've also internally been absorbed with major elections in Germany and France. I think France in particular has a significant role to play here. And certainly we would like to see Macron and the new government in France picking up the mantle and driving the agenda forward to help the situation. There are so many potential disaster situations here. If we fail to invest in Tunisia and to support Tunisia, we create a void. Into that void will come something else, likely Russia or China. I think there's also a big concern over security as well. There are over 3,000, Islamic extremists over the border in Libya. And we know from the past that Tunisia can be very vulnerable to this. I also think it's in our interest to support here in terms of our European aspirations for renewable energy. I mean, North Africa has to be one of our best chances through the construction of interconnectors and solar and different measures. So we need friends on our neighborhood borders with stable democracies and safe countries. Finally, really, the other thing is the failure of the democratic model. I mean, we are globally in a very unsafe situation at the moment. China and Russia are exporting values that are not compatible with the free society that we order our lives around. So it's important as an example, not just for Tunisia, but broader, that actually these values are sustained and these values are continued to be adhered to. We definitely need to continue our aid to Tunisia. We cannot let the population starve, and we cannot let the situation get worse. But like James was saying earlier, how do we ensure we don't want to be propagating Saied's regime by giving them blank checks to do what they like. So there has to be a certain amount of a kind of carrot and stick type approach to this. Ultimately we need to stay engaged, we need to stay supportive of the Tunisian people and use every method that we can, both in terms of international pressure, governmental pressure, and also investment and aid to help push Saied towards following a more democratic line and a better approach, and to hopefully getting Tunisia back onto its feet as a stable country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Richard. Before I turn this over to the audience, that last point, I'd like to get the rest of the panel's point of view on this dilemma that I think Richard brought out very well there, between, on the one hand, the need to support the Tunisian people, which I think is clear for everyone, but on the other, to do it in such a way that you do not legitimize Mr. Saied's power grab. This is a very difficult situation. Related to that also, as I said earlier, is the possible agreement with the IMF, which is going to be painful and is going to be difficult. The president it doesn't seem to be too keen on it at the moment, and I'd be interested in the panel's views on that as well, because for the aid, all the aid that that Europe or indeed the US can give, the main game in town for the next year or two, it seems to me, I may be wrong, but it seems to me, will be another IMF tranche, because the country is on its knees. And not just because of what has been happening, but also because of the aftermath of the COVID crisis, tourism, and the rest of it. So can I ask the speakers, maybe starting with Ahmed, to address that issue? How do you see it going forward? Should the West, let's say the West, including Europe there, go ahead now, full steam ahead in supporting Tunisia economically? And if so, how? Ahmed, could I ask you to go first? You got the mic? Yeah, good.
Well, it is a dilemma. because we do not want our people to starve. And they are in a risk of starving. Basically, Kais Saied, he just made things worse. That's what he's been doing during the last 9 months. If we flush some cash, we know it should go through the government. It cannot go otherwise. And we need to do it. We need to do it in a proper way. We cannot ask anyone else to help in an illegal way. Would that solve the problem? Would that alleviate the risk of starvation or social outbreak? No. We've heard from many experts, European experts, who are saying even if we have right now billions of dollars, being put or flushed into the economic system of Tunisia, that will not solve the issue, because the policy of the government right now, of the surrounding of Kais Saied, has really rushed into corruption. And secondly, into this populist propaganda that, yes, we have a different model, a populist model, and the word is with us. And that was the reaction of Mr. Kais Saied's, I would not say regime, but I would say Mr. Kais Saied, in reaction to the declaration of the European Commissioner, who in the declaration said, we are ready to help Tunisia with the IMF so that Tunisia will get its $4 billion and so on. The answer is that we Tunisians have to come up with a plan for economic reforms, and then, yes, we will be more than happy to get any help so that that money will be invested in Tunisia and will not just pay, salaries of the bureaucracy, because this is what's going to happen. And it should not go to pay the salaries of any institution, which will strengthen the power grab of Mr. Kais Saied. So for the sake of the Tunisian people, we need any help to secure the proper outcome that we Tunisians are able to help ourselves. Otherwise, yes, you can flush money, but next month you will need to add more monies, and the following ones even more, and it will not stop.
Et Osama, qu'est-ce que vous en pensez?
Écoutez, oui, bien sûr, la Tunisie et les Tunisiens ont besoin d'aide. Personne ne peut nier ça. Et il faut aider la Tunisie. Il faut que la communauté européenne et la communauté internationale soient aux côtés des Tunisiens. Et c'est un appel qu'on fait. Bien sûr, Kais Saied, quand il fait des discours, c'est toujours les autres, ils ne veulent pas qu'on aide les Tunisiens. Bien sûr, c'est une responsabilité nationale et c'est une responsabilité même vis-à-vis de nos accords entre la Tunisie, la communauté européenne, que ce soit des accords bilatéraux ou que ce soit des accords comme l'accord de 1995, la Tunisie a besoin de ces aides. Maintenant, bien sûr, conditionner ces aides par rapport à un dialogue national et par rapport à une unité nationale, par rapport à un accord sur des réformes où tout le monde soit au moins d'accord, parce que c'est des réformes qui sont très dures à appliquer, c'est des réformes qu'il faut appliquer, c'est des réformes qu'il faut aller de l'avant pour pouvoir faire, bien sûr, une issue pérenne et durable et non pas un issue sur du court terme. Tout ça, ça exige une union nationale, ça exige de la transparence. Aujourd'hui, le vrai problème, c'est que avant vous aviez un Parlement élu et tous les fonds étaient contrôlés par le Parlement, par les différentes institutions de contrôle. Nous, Tunisiens, on a un problème aujourd'hui, puisqu'il y a une crise de confiance, on a un problème avec l'issue de ces fonds. On ne sait pas où ça va. Moi, je me permets de le dire. Celui qui s'est permis de casser toute une constitution, de détruire toutes les institutions, eh ben lui-même, je peux dire qu'il peut savoir il peut pas savoir où ça va, tous ces fonds. Et là, c'est un vrai problème. Parce que l'État tunisien, et nous, on représente l'État démocratique en tout cas, avait ce rôle où tout le monde surveillait tout le monde. Il y avait bien sûr des problèmes, mais tout le monde surveillait tout le monde. Il y avait cette transparence. Aujourd'hui, il y a un vrai problème de transparence. C'est pour ça que je vous dis qu'il y a un jumelage de problèmes et un cumul de problèmes qu'il faut solutionner tout de suite. Et ça ne peut pas se solutionner par un seul homme, même s'il est élu par 3 millions de personnes. Donc c'est un vrai problème et c'est pour ça que la crise est intense. Et c'est pour ça qu'il faut que tout le monde trouve une solution. Les Tunisiens doivent trouver une solution. Et on va y arriver, bien sûr. Par ce combat que tout le monde mène, on va y arriver. Mais c'est une crise profonde et il faut l'analyser dans sa profondeur et non pas comme ça avec un avis. Le cœur, bien sûr, il parle toujours pour dire il faut tout de suite résoudre les problèmes. Nous, quand il y avait 2 bateaux qui étaient en rade il y a une semaine pour la question de blé, il y avait 2 bateaux qui ne pouvaient pas payer Kais Saied. Eh ben, on a fait ce qu'il fallait, on a fait le lobbying nécessaire, on a parlé avec nos collègues députés européens pour qu'ils payent ces bateaux, pour aider à ce que ce problème s'arrange. Maintenant, les problèmes macroéconomiques et les problèmes économiques et les problèmes sociaux, il faut qu'ils s'arrangent, mais d'une façon inclusive. Et ces aides, il faut qu'ils viennent, bien sûr, parce que les Tunisiens ont besoin de ces aides.
Merci, Osama. And Sofia Makhloufi, another point made earlier was leadership, especially from France. What do you think about that? A point made earlier was the need for more leadership on the European side, and France, of course, a country with a strong traditional relationship, was mentioned. You're the chair of the Tunisia-France Friendship Group. What are the prospects there for the French to engage now that the election, well, at least the presidential election, is over?
But I think in France, now is the election and is parliament election in June, and we can't read clearly the position. But I think France has problem like the old puissance colonial. And that's the problem for the French when they are looking to the Tunisia and Algeria and the Maghreb. They have that problem like the old force, colonialist, and they can't have a free thought about what is going once. Two, I think France, like all the European states in the south of Europe, thinking always about the security. And if you let me, I want to go about your question about helping Tunisia. I think we have the Tunisians, we have to stop asking for help and asking for a loan, because I think that we do that since with Ben Ali, and we do that since the revolution, and just we accumulate the loan, and we are struggle back the loans, and we have problem to give back the loans. My problem for me is all the Tunisian politics, party, economics, society, the trade unions, we have to sit around a table and look for what's our economic and financial problems. And with inclusive dialogue, and we propose a solution for development for 10, 15 years to make a real economy and to save Tunisia and to save the young people in Tunisia and to save the Tunisian people. We can't continue to just ask for to be helped. It's our problem. We have to find a solution. And in that way, we could talk with our European friend and, and the free worlds how to make an equal development, to make really a modern economy and make a social and economic development. And that we have to be agree, all Tunisians, about the solution. Without that, we are going, I think, to a very dangerous way and to break all what we built since now years and years in economic and in civil society and in the schools, and all of that would be break. And I think if Mr. Saied continue to that the only way with his personal project, we will not find a solution, because all what he talk, we don't see the financial problems and economic problems. It's just metaphysical thought. And I think he has to understand now, with all the Tunisian, we have to sit around the table and to find a solution. And it's emergency to find that solution. Because if we don't find that solution, the risk is to have a social explosion. And with that social explosion, I think the people hasn't got confidence in us, like politicians. They haven't got confidence in the state, and they haven't got, I think, confidence in the president. It's just we are in crisis, and they look for him to find a solution. I think he will not find a solution on his own. We have to find that all the forces to find a solution. If not, I think we'll go really in a dangerous way.
Thank you. And let's turn it over to the audience for questions. We have a little time left for questions and answers. So does anyone need to make a point? Please do. Yes, Dylan from SEPS.
What about now? Yep. I was wondering about the role of youth in Tunisian society. I was looking at Arab Barometer results that were released at the end of 2021, in which it says that for those who are 18 to 29 years old, I believe, about 63% would like to leave Tunisia, emigrate for educational reasons, economic opportunity, and seeing that the title is "What Future for Tunisia's Democracy," if only 37% remain, I was wondering, how do you involve all of these people who want to leave, and knowing that already almost or above 1 million Tunisians live abroad. So the future part is so many youth are leaving, and then there's the other aspect, which is there are already so many Tunisians living, especially in Europe.
Good point. Who'd like to address that first?
Well, thank you very much for the question. Well, you are right. I mean, most of the Tunisian youth, they want to leave the country right now. I left the country when I was 22 and came back to Tunisia after 20 years. So I left it as a very young person, went back as an adult. Right now, my son told me, well, Dad, I would like to go back to London to finish my studies. So I was not even able to convince both my sons that there is hope for them in my country. And this is a failure. This is a bleeding hearted failure, and it makes me sad. I was a minister of youth, but I would say that we the new, who are part of the political elite, during the last 10 years, did not give enough hope to those youths. This crisis is old, and this is not an excuse. This is a description. I mean, Ben Ali, when he took power in his coup, the first thing he's done is dialogue with youth. I was maybe 21 years of age. That time I participated in youth houses and so, and then they have to exclude me because I am part of a political party. So there was no answer. And the state of Tunisia made many dialogues with you so that they tried to bring solutions. But those, they kept them away from decision makers. We also, during the last 10 years, we were not successful enough to tell our Tunisian youth that yes, there is a future for them in the country. And Kais Saied is making it worse. You just have a look at numbers of suicide in Tunisia during the last 9 months, which is rising. Numbers of illegal immigrants and those who want to leave the country, which is rising. So definitely, Kais Saied is not the answer. Yes, we did not provide the answer, but there is a hope through democracy, through a state which is not corrupt, through people who are willing to change, to bring about change, so that those youth will find hope in their country. Terrorism has definitely, is almost not there in the country, in Tunisia, apart from, I mean, some agents which are not related to the society. The problem is, right now, there are, and I've heard it from one MEP, and I was shocked, there are 3,500 terrorists who are there in Libya waiting. We were able to fight terrorism in 2015 when they came to Bingerdan. It was youth and the society, the social fabric, which has fought them. Right now, it is the perfect context for the return of terrorism. And actually, terrorism rose up during the time of Ben Ali. So let's be clear about it. Yes, right now, we did not succeed in giving the answer to our youth, and we are responsible for that. But what is the solution? Is it Kais Saied's path, or is it again a strong man securing stability? Well, both answers failed, because a strong man rule has failed for 2 decades. Ben Ali was there. Kais Saied is failing faster. We have started working, we have started progressing, and I think our process is a better answer and is a less costly answer. We just need to keep working towards it and believe that we can do it. And I do trust that we can do it. I'm not happy because and I'm sorry for being long, and I did not fail, but I'm right now striving to take my responsibility towards those youth and try to help and tell them there is an answer in your country. And Tunisia is a beautiful country, and it is a young country where there is hope.
Thank you, Ahmed. Anyone else like to react to that? I have to say, whenever we deal with Tunisia or indeed any other countries of the region, we always have to remember the average age is in the mid-20s. 20 years less than it is in Europe. Each time I go back to Cairo, I look around me and I feel so old, because I am. And it's a very, very important question. Thank you for that, Ahmed. Now, who else would like to react? Yes, please go ahead, Sofiane.
Can I speak French? Ouais. Je peux être plus précis. Écoutez, je crois que pour les Tunisiens, il n'y a pas simplement l'immigration illégale, il y a aussi l'immigration légale. Donc, quand vous trouvez presque, dans les 5 dernières années, plus que 60 000 ingénieurs qui étaient pris en Europe, ça, pour nous, c'est une perte pour la Tunisie. Je crois que nous, les politiciens, on n'était pas conscients de ce problème parce qu'on aurait dû aussi changer les lois en Tunisie. Parce que quand les sociétés européennes viennent en Tunisie, ils emploient un ingénieur tunisien pour lui donner 800 dinars, c'est-à-dire presque 250 €. Or, ils payent un ingénieur en Europe au moins 2500 €. C'est-à-dire que ça aussi, dans ces rapports-là d'exploitation entre le nord et le sud, doit changer. Je crois que c'est à nous aussi de changer les lois pour ne pas permettre l'exploitation sur notre territoire de nos ingénieurs et de nos jeunes pour qu'ils ne sauront pas, qu'ils ne partent pas. C'est-à-dire que dans mon projet et ma pensée à moi, la coopération avec l'Europe, et puisque là on est en Occident, par l'Europe, doit être sur le même pied d'égalité. Démocratie, économie, problème social, problème de sécurité, sur le même pied d'égalité. Et avec tout ce qui s'est passé depuis des années et nous a mis une crise, je crois que tout le peuple tunisien et les jeunes se posent les bonnes questions, mais ce n'est pas la bonne solution d'immigrer ou de prendre tous ces risques-là. Non plus, je ne crois pas que M. Kais Saied ait la bonne solution, parce que je ne crois pas qu'on peut construire une société et un développement simplement avec un discours populiste où c'est moi le meilleur et je sais tout et tous les autres sont des mauvais. Donc, je ne crois pas que le populisme est une solution ni en Europe, et je crois que l'Europe aussi souffre du populisme, et je crois que chez nous aussi, le populisme n'est pas une solution malgré toutes les difficultés des solutions. Merci.
Any other reactions? If not, we'll move on to another question. Oui, s'il vous plaît.
Juste en fait pour dire, vous avez raison, le constat, on le fait tous ensemble. Bien sûr, il y a un climat aujourd'hui au niveau de la jeunesse qui ne croit plus, en tout cas les politiciens, ils ne croient plus en cette démocratie. Pourquoi? Parce que pour eux, elle ne leur satisfait pas leurs désirs. Mais les jeunes en France, pareil, hein, les gilets jaunes sont sortis pendant 2 ans pour dire que la jeunesse ne trouve pas de travail. Et pourtant, on n'a pas fait chuter le Parlement. En Belgique, en Allemagne, la jeunesse aussi souffre. Mais ils le demandent démocratiquement. Et puis les solutions, bien sûr, il faut se projeter. Je vais vous dire une chose. Les désirs, il leur faut les moyens. Nous, on a été élus en 2019. Moi, je vivais en France avec ma famille. J'ai cru à cette démocratie. Pourtant, je vivais en démocratie à Paris. Mais je voulais que mon pays devienne un pays démocratique. Et quand j'étais jeune, je suis parti parce que justement, il n'y avait pas d'ambition. Et je suis resté 20 ans en France. Depuis 2011, pendant 10 ans, il y a eu des erreurs, on l'a dit, on le reconnaît. Mais il y avait aussi quelque chose dont il faut que tout le monde, et justement la population tunisienne, soit dans un climat apaisé pour y réfléchir. En 2010, le budget de l'État était de 19 milliards de dinars, à peu près 7 milliards d'euros. En 2021, en 2020 en tout cas, le budget de la masse salariale est devenu 20 milliards de dinars. Rien que la masse salariale. Ça veut dire quoi? Ça veut dire que l'État, moi je parle État, je ne parle pas ni parti politique ni rien, parce que plusieurs se sont succédés, Nada, Nida Tunis, Tahia Tunis, nous, Tayyar, tout le monde s'est succédé sur l'État. Ça veut dire quoi? Ça veut dire qu'il y a eu un investissement dans l'emploi. Mais dans quoi? Au sein de l'institution publique, au sein de l'État. Ce n'est pas la solution. La solution aujourd'hui, d'abord, c'est revenir à des valeurs. Et ça, il faut un travail pédagogique et il faut un travail fait par qui? Par, non pas le Messie, mais par les partis politiques. Il faut que les partis politiques jouent ce rôle-là. Il faut que la jeunesse joue ce rôle-là d'une façon inclusive. Et ça, c'est un travail à faire en profondeur. Encore une fois, ce sont des problèmes qu'il faut régler en profondeur et non pas comme ça avec les on va dire les mots comme ça ou un peu de populisme, mais on va dire qu'on va régler les problèmes. Il faut que l'État aussi connaisse son rôle. Est-ce que l'État aujourd'hui, son rôle, c'est de faire travailler la jeunesse ou est-ce qu'elle doit trouver et créer un environnement où la jeunesse peut s'épanouir pour créer son emploi, pour créer la richesse, pour devenir, au lieu d'être diplômé pour travailler au sein des institutions publiques et pour devenir fonctionnaire, pourquoi pas la jeunesse aujourd'hui doit être formée pour créer de l'emploi, pour créer des entreprises, pour créer, et pour ça il faut réformer bien sûr l'administration, il faut enlever toutes ces autorisations qui sont en train d'emprisonner la jeunesse et ne pas pouvoir, ils ne peuvent pas exploser toute leur dynamique et toute leur énergie. Donc oui, il faut trouver des solutions, mais encore une fois, il faut traiter le problème dans sa profondeur. Et ça, il faut créer le climat périn pour, qui est un climat démocratique, parce que, pardon, excusez-moi, parce que tout ça se crée dans le débat, et dans le débat déjà avec la jeunesse et dans le débat politique et dans la société civile. Tout ça n'existe plus. Donc, on va dire quoi? On va dire à la jeunesse, on va vous promettre, et c'est ce que fait Kais Saied, on va vous donner les terres, on va prendre l'argent des riches, on va vous la donner, on va vous ramener l'argent qui est à l'extérieur, vous allez voir, attendez, vous aurez votre argent, faites rien, hein. Surtout faites rien, on va vous distribuer l'argent du peuple et vous allez être les rois. Comme j'ai dit tout à l'heure, un Kadhafi sans pétrole et qui promet mondes et merveilles, mais le monde des merveilles ne viendra pas parce qu'il faut un travail sociétal en profondeur, il faut un travail politique entre toute la société tunisienne et la jeunesse tunisienne pour pouvoir avancer.
Very clear, très clair et net. Now, do we have any more questions from the audience? The floor is open. Yes, sir, there, if you would. Please tell us who you are.
Ça marche, merci beaucoup. My name is Nordin Fridi. I'm a journalist and I'm Tunisian. I have very few observations, very quick one. It's very easy to criticize European Union or United States not to support the democratic experience in Tunisia. It's sure that the European did not do enough with us, but still there is a problem of the lack of competence of the elites who run the country. I mean, the political parties, they are different. No, it's lies. They were just incompetent. Second, the elites has today a responsibility, and we see the very bleak situation that we have today. They are not able to find, let's say, an easy platform to face the coming dictatorship. Mr. Kais Saied succeeded in one thing until now. He achieved one thing is dividing the Tunisian. Now he achieved that, and this is, I think, the only achievement. So my question to the panelists: do you think that this polarization will lead to the cocotte minute, as the gentleman said, and will this explosion comes, let's say, in the summer before his election? Agenda, whether it is the referendum or the election. And I have a clarification to ask to Mr. Galoul. You said in the end of your presentation that you are the only or the last moderate generation. You are addressing that to the Europeans. okay? And you said now we have a proper context for the terrorism. These moderates you are thinking about, are you talking about your own political party? Means yet the generation or the leadership of Nahda? Or, and then you may explain us. If you are talking about us, Tunisian, I don't agree with you. We have enough Tunisian who are moderate. Now when you are talking about the terrorist context, this is very true, but who are you thinking about? Your own Salafist base, social base? Or you are talking about some people that you know very well that Nahda has a relationship, and these people are, let's say, ils sont sortis du ventre de Nahda, ils sont allés en Syrie et en Libye. So it's very long, but thank you very much.
Thank you. I think, Ahmed, that really is for you to answer. So here's the mic.
Well, quite few assumptions, and it needs to be discussed. But let me try to answer the question. When I say we are the last generation of moderates, I don't mean, I'm not speaking about Nahda. I'm speaking about at least the cross-party presence, which is right here. And why is that? Why is that? I'm not saying that exclusively this, but when we study right now the Tunisian society, we can see that with populism and comes radicalism. And when there is despair, also comes radicalism. There's something typical in the Tunisian revolution is that it is based on a concept of consensus and dialogue, inclusive dialogue. In 2013, our constitution did not go into excluding those who are described as old evils from participating into the democratic process. And that is not just Nahda, that's all Tunisians. This is a constitution which have been voted by 92%. So the revolutionary approach of the Tunisians is a moderate approach. What we are fighting against right now as Democrats is a radical populist approach. If this moderate democratic approach fails, then it has no legitimacy. We cannot convince our youth that democracy is the answer to the problems. It's only populism and radicalism which will be the possible answer to what is described as a failure. So you are part of that generation of moderates, you are right. There are many moderates, but I'm speaking about the future generations and those youths. What is the message which we Tunisians, we political elite are giving them, and also the international community? And this is why I would say, and I have said, this is the last generation of moderates. We either succeed in proving that democracy works, consensus works, dialogue works. Otherwise, I would tell you something. We have many friends in Libya, and the international community is trying to mediate between Libyans. But right now, we cannot tell them that dialogue works with them. They say, you have failed. You Tunisians have failed. So the only resort for us to take our rights is arms and fighting. This is why we are the last generation of moderates. So it's worth supporting this moderate trend in Tunisia. As for the issues of Salafists, and these are, they came from Nahda. Well, this is a speculation, and I'm not here to answer these speculations. And this is part of the propaganda. But we are dealing with societal phenomena. When we study them, we should step away from propaganda and study what gives water to the spiking root of radicalism. And radicalism, it has many faces, and the worst of it is if it takes religion as a background, because it becomes very dangerous. As for Nahda, well, you've seen us for 10 years. We are there for 10 years, for the last 10 years. You know what we are saying, what we are calling for. So please, deal with us as we are, you've seen us in power, you've seen us getting out of power within a national dialogue, you've seen us how we are dealing with a coup, and we are dealing it with our partner, we are calling for dialogue. So please deal with us as we are. I mean, speculations, well, we can have many times, so I would say sorry.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've actually reached the end of our session, unless there is an urgent need for anyone on the panel to add to anything there. There isn't? No. In that case, go on. 2 minutes you have. Good. Is that all right, Asavia? We can have 2 more minutes. Thank you.
Pour répondre à notre ami. Moi, quand j'ai dit explosion sociale, parce que quand on a eu l'explosion sociale en 2011, qu'on a appelé la révolution, excusez-moi, je parle en français, comme ça je peux aller plus vite. Il y avait quand même une petite confiance du peuple dans une partie de l'élite qui a pu faire sortir le pays de la crise, parce qu'en 2011 aussi, l'État a tombé. Je crois que maintenant, il n'y a plus de confiance, ni dans l'État, ni dans les forces politiques, ni dans l'élite, etc. Une explosion sociale peut être très dangereuse. Pour la Tunisie, pourquoi? Et je répondrai à la question de terrorisme. Nous, on a réussi à combattre le terrorisme, mais garder une constitution libérale, hein, de liberté, et les libertés, malgré pas mal de choses. Et je crois que moi, l'extrémisme, on peut le contenir dans une société de liberté, en même temps que la sécurité travaille fermement. C'est ce qu'on a fait, je crois, pendant 6 et 7 ans. Je crois la Tunisie, avec le voisinage de la Libye, hein, on n'a pas la Suisse, nous, comme voisin, ni la Belgique, on a la Libye, quoi. Et le terrorisme dans les montagnes de l'Algérie, depuis des années, n'est pas éradiqué. Et on a réussi quand même, dans une stabilité sociale, etc., malgré les crises politiques et économiques. Donc pour moi, ce que j'ai peur, c'est que ce populisme-là qui guide l'État maintenant avec M. Saïed, et qui n'a pas de solution. Je crois que tout quelqu'un sensé, il voit qu'il n'y a pas de solution. Une explosion sociale, les gens n'ont plus confiance, ni dans l'élite, ni dans les politiciens, ni dans le président de la République, ni dans l'État. Ça va épuiser, je vous parle pratiquement, hein, parce que bon, tout le monde, enfin, je fais la politique, j'étais dans l'État, les forces de police et militaires vont être épuisées. Est-ce qu'on garantit qu'on n'a pas d'une infiltration de terrorisme de la Libye? Je crois que c'est une crainte réelle. C'est pour cela que moi, je défends trouver une solution politique et économique avant l'explosion sociale. Parce que sinon, après, on ne garantit plus rien. Alors maintenant, au moins, que nous, on est critiques sur le passé, de nous, en tant que politiciens, et que le président Saïed doit se rendre compte aussi qu'il n'a pas la solution, qu'on va la trouver ensemble, et que les échecs, on apprend des échecs. Ça, 1, 2. Moi, je crois que la maladie intellectuelle en Tunisie de la démocratie, bien que moi et Nahda, on est très différents, je suis très critique, et je crois que la bataille politique entre mon groupe politique et Nahda n'est pas à démontrer. Mais la maladie intellectuelle en Tunisie, que je crois qui a voulu tuer la démocratie et qui était utilisée, c'est que il faut toujours un problème qui s'appelle le Nahda, soit la démocratie, soit Nahda. Et moi, je veux la démocratie, Nahda est dedans, et on peut vraiment se battre politiquement contre Nahda et la gagner politiquement et démocratiquement. Mais utiliser les forces dures de l'État pour éradiquer un adversaire, pour moi, ce n'est pas de la démocratie. Et l'extrémisme, c'est pour cela que moi j'ai mis la question de la démocratie, encore 1 minute, hein, dans le processus civilisationnel et culturel tout à l'heure. Parce que l'extrémisme n'est pas ignorant à notre culture aussi, à notre civilisation. Donc comment faire ça? Il faut inclure tout le monde qui veut être avec des moyens non violents dans la société et éradiquer sécuritairement tous ceux qui utilisent la violence. Voilà, merci.
Well, I think it just remains for me to thank the panel for a pretty lively debate. We could probably continue with this for the rest of the day, but they have other things to do, as indeed does CEPS. So once again, thanks to all, and grand merci for coming in today, and let's keep our fingers crossed that the Tunisian experiment continues. I think everybody agrees on that. It's going to be a difficult year ahead, I can see that. But good luck to all of you, and thank you so much for coming today. All the very best. Bye-bye.